Hey guys, I wanted to record this because I've just been seeing so much. I really regret any amount, and I think most people who have lived through this time, who have followed what's happening with the world, really regardless almost of where you stand, as long as you're like like you're oriented with like any semblance of like, hey, everybody's got rights, everybody's got inalienable, God-given freedoms and rights that can't be stripped away or whatever, right? Which is funny because I started talking about that kind of stuff, and I think the average person, because of how dumbed down our society is, they'll hear a guy like me and they'll be like, oh, he's conservative, or oh, he's right wing, or whatever. But really, what people like me are is people who uh, are trying their best to just follow evidence and see where that leads. And it's funny because when you do that and you don't have, or at least, everybody's got biases, but you're not acting in your bias while you're doing your research. You're legitimately just trying to find out, okay, what's in the external universe? What's going on, right? And when you follow the evidence, you very quickly realize that A, you aren't part of any tribal affiliation. Why? Because you're putting together the evidence. You're trying to use the real world information and evidence to arrive at a conclusion. And you realize very quickly that everybody else, or most people anyway, are not. They're on the opposite end, meaning they're acting out of irrational bias or tribalism, this kind of infatuated, obsessive, dogmatic, my side's correct. And what I mean by that is, even if you're dealing in cases where maybe like the moral argument might be on your side or something, it doesn't really matter because it gets whipped up, the mob gets whipped up into this frenzy of that side very quickly. And this happens on both the left and the right. And I'm not a person who personally identifies myself as like, oh, I'm on the left or I'm on the right. I'm just a person. If anything, if you had to put a gun to my head, I'd say, well, I'm independent, not affiliated with any political organization, because I'm not a political person. I'm not a political careerist. I'm not a person who even is a political commentator. I mean, sure, in the sense that anybody who disagrees with what's going on in today's world is a political commentator, but I'm not. I'm a comedian. I'm an actor. I'm a writer, trying to be a filmmaker. That's who I am as a person. That's my whole mental domain. So for me, for people like me to even feel like they have to get involved with this, I think is an issue in of itself. I've seen more comedians and more entertainers get involved in the independent space I'm talking about, of course, off of television, on the internet, that have done more work as journalists, as investigators, than anybody on Twitter with a blue check mark, or anybody, in the mainstream news environment. And I think that's because of the corruption that exists. And so people like me who do that, you're not anybody's friend in the establishment circles. You're not going to be liked by the left. You're not going to be liked by the right. Channels like Fox News or whatever, they might like you for a day, but they're not going to like you on the day that you're bringing up this is something that's truly controversial, right? They might like you when your opinion happens to agree with their need to have an optics that shows that they are the contrast to the left, right? And so I just say that as an example to explain to people that regardless of what you think, whether it's the media or whether it's the government or whatever politician you're rooting for that week, they're not really on your side. Are there exceptions? Few and far between. But for the most part, no, they're not on your side. They don't really care about you. They're not actually fighting for the things that they're promising you that they're going to give you. And so if that's the case, which it most definitely is, sorry, wake up, people. And then we have massive corruption with the private sector in bed with government, as we see today. What we're seeing is the slow meltdown of our society in one way or another. I don't know where it's going to lead. I hope it doesn't lead to civil war. Some people see that kind of thing as inevitable. I really hope not, genuinely. But we're in catastrophic times. And in catastrophic times, the government in power, which isn't the same as our Constitution and the soul of our country, right? I'm not talking about the people. I'm not talking about our Constitution. I'm not talking about the Declaration of Independence. I'm not talking about the Bill of Rights. Those are the things that do endure spiritually, right, for us all. but the current administrations in power, and keep in mind, this is somebody who hasn't been happy with any administration in power. Wasn't a fan of Bush when I was a kid. Wasn't a fan of Obama. Wasn't a fan of Trump. I haven't been a fan of, not a fan of Biden. Not a fan of any of these guys. I dislike them all equally. Well, maybe not equally. Maybe I have some more disagreements on certain candidates than others. But overall, they've all let down the country and have done things, in my opinion, that were very bad. In a couple cases, maybe certain moves were good. But for the most part, were bad and not good for the country, right? So when a person like me is looking at all this, I'm just going like, hey, guys, we're falling apart, okay? We're heading in a bad direction. We're heading in a we're heading in an unhealthy, direction, and it's been this way my entire life. I mean, even by the time really by the time I was in high school, but especially by the time I got to college, I realized how fractured the discourse was, because the discourse isn't even capable of occurring. Not only is censorship and free speech and the removal of discerning opinions rampant, but you have really the part of the activist has been placed on the student, so that now the student censors himself and censors his fellow classmates. And I certainly experienced a lot of that as someone who, once again, was not even trying to be a political entity, but was trying to be a comedic and entertaining entity. And I found myself running into that constantly. Meanwhile, I had very good friends, and I don't like them for this or whatever. I think they're great people. But I had great friends who were of different races or different persuasions that got away with a lot more, in the sense of like what they could joke about, or how they could think about or talk about things. And it blew my mind, because I never thought I lived in a country where, based off of my skin color or based off of whatever orientation or whatever, that would unlock certain privileges versus other privileges for people. That to me is insane. What I mean by this is, I'm a person who values meritocracy, and I value individualism, meaning I treat each individual as an individual. I assume that they have a depth to them, or are capable of a depth to them, that there are things from them that I can learn, that and that first and foremost, that they're autonomous beings that I cannot compel or coerce to say or believe what I do. And also, why would I want them to do that? Because then we would be moving away from true discussion and true discourse, true debate, and then we move further and further from truth. Because as learned as any individual might be, the only way you can arrive at truth in a group setting is through consensus, and the only healthy way to arrive at truth through consensus is through Socratic debate, through bringing up evidence, and allowing no restriction or curtailing of speech or of thought, because that really, the moment you go down that road, the powers that be inevitably will realize that is a tool that they can use to censor and essentially effectively destroy in the quote-unquote town square anybody who disagrees with them. And then all you have left is a matter of time, very short amount of time, until the tyranny is complete, and that even those who once went along with censoring others and destroying the professional careers and lives of other people, when it starts to bite them in the ass, and then they realize, like, oh, they're not just coming for them, they're coming for me, And so what I'm voicing here is really an apolitical, a-tribal, system thesis about what is occurring with our system and why it's destroying itself, and why there's really just rampant radicalism in a lot of forms, and why our administrations who are in power want to now claim, oh, it's not the political radicalization of universities or the destruction of discourse, the destruction of opposing ideas to exist in civil space anymore. Oh, it's not that. The real issue is the average American who believes in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, or that we have inalienable rights, or that we have the ability to practice free speech, or that we have the ability to have debate in an open environment, right? And that's why you see even people like Russell Brand, for example, who's not in any dimension a conservative or a right-wing person, but he's being blasted in the mainstream news as somebody who is that. Why? Because they cannot have anybody disagree with the narrative. And if you do disagree with the narrative, they have to place you in the media designated others zone, right? Because when you other people, when you say, oh, they're the bad guys, it's the, you know, it's the other political party that's preventing you from exercising your rights, or oh, it's the unvaccinated that are keeping us from returning to normal society. It's like, no. These are government policies ran by corrupt government bureaucrats that are allowing these things to occur, combined with the massive money that's been put into universities and the money that's unfortunately given into our political systems as well, to essentially, whether it's coercion through the money or however you want to see it, that money is fueling the promotion of ideas and the teaching of ideas that are nowhere close to classical education, and by that I mean true education, and they're not even progressive in the sense like, oh, we're heading in a positive direction. It's truly regressive types of ideologies that are being promoted. In fact, I would go so far as to say that any educational institution that promotes ideologies in a strict fervor is heading in a dangerous direction, because that's not what universities should be. Any classroom, any movie, film, book, whatever, should not be telling you what is true and what to think. In my opinion, what it should be is trying to stoke your intelligence and your curiosity so that you can either ask the questions or it asks you questions, rather than tells you answers, is what I'm trying to say. It's getting you to ask internal questions and grow and become more complex and dynamic as a thinker and deeper as a philosopher, rather than becoming more adherent to one strict ideology or one ism that's going to sum up essentially your new replacement for God or for faith, which is what this has become. It has been a replacement, culturally at least. I'm not talking about true faith, but culturally it has replaced that operation of religion with this new political religion, essentially. And there's various forms of it, but it all has one kind of overarching consensus, in my view, as far as where it's headed and what it wants to do. And it's very specific about that. It does want to destroy the world in the way we know it. And by that, I mean it wants to invert the family. It wants to destroy religion. It wants to separate the idea that God comes before the state. Or that God should even be acknowledged at all, and essentially places the state as God. I mean, if you look at any of the, communist revolutions in the 20th century, that was certainly a very primary goal, And nowadays you have a weird thing going on where, we don't have just communism to worry about, and we don't just have, to extend an olive branch to the other side, we don't have just total monopoly capitalism to worry about either. We have all of those, and we have the issue of this lying in bed between the private sector and the government sector, so which makes it a near unstoppable force to contend with at that point, because it's like that's almost in one breath the entirety of our geopolitical and economic system. I mean, that's a big deal, right? And when you have that kind of thing going on, like, for example, what's going on with Big Pharma and the state with emergency use authorization of the COVID vaccines, which, I'm no scientist, I'm no medical doctor, I'm not trying to weigh in on what's what, right? I want other people to arrive at their own conclusions, but I am one of those people who wants people to arrive at their own conclusions, wants people to do their own research. I don't want people to be forced to believe a singular narrative because there's nothing more to it. By the way, that's not how true science works at all. We're always second-guessing our things. I mean, how many medicines have been invented that years later we realized there was side effects or whatever? So anyways, I don't even want to get into all that because I'm not that guy to get into all that for you, right? But I am a guy who's seen a lot of this crap going on, and I go, okay, well, we're heading in a negative direction. Not the first to point this out. A lot of people have for a number of years. And I, in many ways, wish I would have said something sooner in a more public kind of way. But we are reaching this point of no return where the average citizen has completely forgotten and been brainwashed as to what our true history is. And even though a lot of this stuff has happened before and a lot of these tyrannies and oppressions have happened before, we are falling into the same old traps, but it's just got a new fashion for the new day, right? It's just a new form of the old system. And you just have to take a look at like Australia or what's going on in a lot of these countries abroad, unfortunately, to realize, especially in Europe and Australia, to realize where we're headed, and we're headed to that. And that system, regardless of your feeling on so-called quote-unquote conspiracy theories or alternative or fringe or uncommon or unpopular ideas, first let me say, just because something's fringe or unpopular or uncommon by no means means that there's no truth to it or that it's not the truth, by the way. Also, even that term, conspiracy theorists, conspiracy ideas, all that kind of concepts, first of all, a conspiracy in a classical definition is just, more than one person. So two or more people conspiring, meaning creating or engaging in a plan to do something, often that's either criminal or illegal or socially taboo or evil, etc., and so on, right? So that's the true definition of it. I think it was sometime in the 70s, maybe the 60s, I forget exactly when, that the CIA actually actively, and this has been proven in Congress, guys, look into your fucking history, okay? Sorry to curse, but I get angry because people don't know this shit. This was proven in Congress at I believe it was called the Church Committee in the 1970s, where CIA admitted that it had operatives in every national and local newspaper across America. I'm sure there might have been some exceptions, but for the most part, they were saying, yes, we've infiltrated it all. And they had various reasons as to why they were doing that, but for the most part, yes, it was to manage stories in times when it was, they didn't directly say that part, but basically it was unflattering to the CIA or against a narrative that the CIA wanted promoted, okay? And if you think that doesn't occur nowadays, I mean, just watch any mainstream news, whether it's CNN, MSNBC. I'm not a fan of any corporate news, by the way, and that includes Fox News. I don't like any of them. But if you turn those on, what do they have? Oh, here's the ex-CIA director to tell you how to feel this week, okay? So people need to start waking up, because we've moved from the 70s, where we at least were like, oh shit, this shit's happening, it's going on, we got to fix this, to nowadays where they, we literally have CIA dudes on being as anchors. I mean, Anderson Cooper, guys like that, right, who literally worked for the CIA or interned for the CIA or whatever post-college. So it's very obvious that there was that influence, and even if it wasn't directly from some intelligence group, the fact that our media has been so unreliable and so obviously stoking division, whether it's along the lines of race or sex or gender or trans rights or whatever it might be, right? They completely control and manipulate the narrative. So people need to start waking up and realizing this isn't really about what your individual political ideas are. In fact, for the most part, it doesn't really matter what the differences are between you and me as far as what we disagree on. What matters is, what do we agree on? And if we do not at least agree, meaning all Americans, and I would venture to say at this point the world as well in their respective countries, but I can only worry about one thing at a time. So at least with all Americans to get behind the idea that the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights need to be upheld at all costs. Why? Because they are the only documents that throughout humanity that have lasted a long enough time span, that have enshrined the rights of the individual into law, into canon. And even though so many things have happened in the 21st and 20th centuries that have eroded those and circumvented those constitutional rights, we have to take that back into our own hands, and we have to stand up for that and say, hey, we have the right. We have the right. God gave us these rights. This isn't the government that has the right to come in and tell us what we can and cannot do, or what we can put in our bodies, or when we can put it into our bodies, or whether or not we can work, or whether or not we can feed our families. Okay, we are reaching mass paranoia, mass psychosis level of brokenness with our country. The disinformation, the misinformation, which sure can occur and be produced by all sides, bias can be produced by all sides, but doesn't matter, because if we're all destroyed in our ability to critically think and ask questions and sift through the information, and there's all this poisonous information being injected into the thing, it doesn't matter who's right, who's wrong, who's morally what. If there are evil entities who are aware of this, and by that I mean like actors, like organizations, agencies, etc., and so on, who are aware of the situation, which, believe me, they absolutely are, and this includes probably private sector intelligence groups as well, which do like financial forecasting and things like that. They would absolutely use this scenario as they are to play into their advantage, and I'm not capable in a court of law of proving what that end goal is, outside of saying, well, here's what some of those people say, and when you look at their documents and what they claim to believe and what they claim is going forward, it's very fucking clear what they want. And I'm sorry, but it is what the conspiracy theorists, quote unquote, have been saying all along, which that general community, even though there's plenty of crazies out there, I get it, not everybody's right who has some kind of grand epiphany about how the world works, but the general consensus was this: there's going to be, and coincidentally, it's exactly what the Bible talks about as well, there's going to be a one world government and a one world religion that a very, ancient and powerful group of wealthy people have been, essentially marching the world towards. And I get that to the average guy who's worked in sales or whatever, the average guy who's worked a 9-to-5 job his whole life and paid the bills and fed his kids, I really do appreciate how far off of, or far-fetched that might sound to a guy like that. But I invite you this: you as a person have been in this, mouse wheel, for a long time, rat wheel, whatever those things are called, for a long time. And if I maybe say, you are that guy in Pluto's allegory of the cave, where there's 3 guys chained to a wall and a fireplace behind them, and then a road next to the fireplace. People come and go, and the only thing those guys see their entire lives are shadows. And so they come to believe that the only thing that's real is the shadow forms that they see on the cave walls. The shadow world's the only thing that's real to them. Then one day, according to this legend or the story, one of the men is unchained and taken out of the cave, and he's shown the entire world, and he sees daylight for the first time and all this stuff, and he's blown away. And then they bring the guy back, which I think this is just so terrible and evil if this ever actually happened, but that's how the story goes. And then they bring him back and rechain him to the wall, and of course he tells everything that he's seen about the world and that he's learned to his friends, but of course his friends don't believe him because they have no frame of reference to believe him, because they've seen shadows their whole life. And so there's no way they can even understand it, even if he worded it perfectly. And I think if that doesn't sum up where we are today, I don't know what does. That to me is the nail on the head. That is the issue, is that we are so far from truth. We are so distorted in the information we get. We are so distorted in the way we think of ourselves and the way we think of how one should spend our time on this earth. And I'm sorry, but a lot of that is concerted or financially invested efforts to make you feel and think and act and live a life in that way. And I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I just want to make sure you understand what the real information out there is, so that you can then arrive at the truth, and that together, hopefully, we can start moving our country and the world in a better direction. Because this really is make or break time. We really are in a very tough time right now. And I do not encourage or condone violence in any shape, size, or whatever. I only want to, I'm only seeking with the things I say and talk about, I'm seeking a reunification of the American people, to remember that, once again, regardless of your political or religious or otherwise affiliations, we should be and we are Americans first. and that we have to respect our rights. And I mean this in the depths of my soul. I don't care who you are, or how you live your life to a large extent, as long as we can agree, hey, you can say what you want, I can say what I want, and we might not agree on a lot of things, but guess what? If we respect each other's individual, inalienable rights at that level, what that allows us to do in the public discourse space is use the power of language in discourse and debate to effectively arrive at the truth. And no, not everybody will arrive at the truth with us. There will still be people that say, oh, that's not the truth, even when they see the truth. This is the nature of and history of mankind, okay? That's inescapable. That's unavoidable. But if we have one fucking chance at fixing any of this shit, it's by realizing that we are Americans first, that we do have individual rights, and that we have to abide by that process at all costs. Because there are these enslavers, these plotters, these whatever you want to call them. You can even say, hey, they're not trying to build a one world government and one world religion. That's too culty for me, right? I don't believe that anybody could ever do that. Fine, okay. Can you at least recognize that they want to consolidate massive amounts of power and wealth? That they at least want to that the banking cartels and big pharma and big state and big tech and big media and all that shit and big education are all conspiring to kind of uproot any semblance, recognizable semblance of what American life used to be. And, to me, there's no reason that we can't continue going on in a productive sense, addressing whatever it might be that you think still are issues today, whether it's, certain kinds of civil rights issues or whatever. But we can't do it in the name of destroying and tearing down everything positive that has been built through time, or over the course of time in America, right? There's plenty of bad things America and each country respectively has done in its past. No country and no person is without sin and is without having committed some level of crime. We have to move past this idea that, we need everything to be perfect. We have to start waking up and realizing, look, I am doing this in the name of all my friends I've ever cared about, all my family that I care about and love. I legitimately, genuinely have no ill will towards anyone other than people who are trying to oppress and enslave us by destroying public discourse, destroying our ability to have free speech, destroying our ability to even share information so that we can figure out and arrive and think for ourselves, and arrive at the truth for ourselves. They don't even want that. They don't even want you the ability to share information in an effective way, because they want to own the communication channels. They want to control what they teach your kids in school. They want to control what kind of message can be broadcast on media. And once again, I'm not a political guy. I fucking hate that I have to even talk about this right now. I genuinely do. I'm a comedian. I'm an actor. I'm an entertainer. I write. Everything about my life is about storytelling. I'm saying this mostly as a defensive artist before anything else, because selfishly that's what I care about most. And I know that if I don't say something now, I'm not going to be able to tell a joke, if I'm even allowed to tell a joke now, in 20 or 30 years. I'm not going to be able to make the movie that I want to make. I'm not going to be able to write and publish the book that I want to write that tells the truth that I've seen in my lifetime. Because very shortly, and we are, make no mistake, rapidly approaching that day when we won't have any rights left and we won't have any recognition of what our country is. And this shouldn't make me left-wing, right-wing, up, down, or all around, right? This doesn't make me anything other than a concerned fucking citizen worried about where the country's headed. And if you think that what I'm talking about is, dangerous or radical or crazy, then I think you need to maybe reevaluate where you get your information from and what news sources you listen to and watch to. Because I'll tell you this, I'm a guy who, I'm not perfect by any means. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I genuinely try and listen and research anything that I claim to truly believe and care about. I look at 7 or 8 different sources. I go to fringe and alternative and independent websites to figure out, okay, well, what are they saying versus the mainstream? And I listen to the mainstream too, even though I hate it 99% of the time, because I genuinely am trying to listen to everybody and trying to arrive at some conclusion of, okay, what is truth? Just for my own basic planning for the future. And yet it evolved. Obviously, I got way more involved than I expected to, but it just shows you it's because we're in such a dangerous time that people like me have to say something, and we do. Trust me. If you're out there right now and you feel like you can't say something because of your job or whatever, or they're trying to force you to be vaccinated or whatever, and once again, I'm not against whatever. I'm just against the idea that people should be forced or mandated to do something, especially a medical procedure, in order to keep their jobs. I think that's insane. We've never had that before in this country ever. Or to go to school or whatever. And I'm sorry, but it's not the same as vaccine shots as when you're going to school when you're a kid. It's just not the same. It's different kind of vaccine technology. Some people would debate it's even, you could even call it a vaccine because it's not a classical vaccine, right? Once again, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not that guy. I'm not trying to host people on my podcast or something to have that debate at all. I'm just trying to point out that we have never... we're leapfrogging over our rights. We're leapfrogging over any kind of democratic process that resembles anything like the republic we're supposed to be having. That's what I'm for. I'm not standing on either side of whatever. I'm standing on the side of freedom. I'm standing on the side of people have rights, and you have no right as the government to come in and separate me from my family, to separate me from my God, to separate me from my ability to earn a living or put food on the table. And so help me, if you do see me as a threat just because I believe that, well, guess what? Fuck you. Damn you. We are coming for you, you piece of shit. Because if you think that me or that average person, that average American is evil, guess what? You got another thing coming. You are the enemy. You need to look inside your own soul and your own self and realize that, guess what? I don't care if you believe in an afterlife or not. You are going to be damned because you are on the side of the enemy and you are on the side of evil. And I don't care if you believe in God or not. I don't care if you believe in evil or not. Guess what? I've seen some shit in my life. I know God's real. I know evil's real. And I know that corruption in our government is completely, 100%, without any iota or shadow of doubt real. And I know that these things that people love to call conspiracy, to mock it, to laugh at it, to say there's nothing at it, there's nothing in it, there's nothing to it, are people who are ignorant, who do not research things, who do not do any research, who do not try to follow the evidence, who do not even look outside of their own small worldview. They don't ever question their worldview. And you're hearing a person who, I'm once again, might not be perfect, but I question my worldview constantly. I constantly try to separate my internal theory from objective nature. And try to look at, hey, let's wander outside the classroom for a few minutes and see, does the theory that I believe in my textbook line up and align with objective reality, with objective nature? Because right now, you know what I mean? Like, people don't do that anymore. People don't question their convictions. They don't question why they're so passionate. They're just caught up in the frenzy of the mob, the emotions of the mob. And I get it. For a lot of people, it makes you feel something. It makes you feel a part of something. It makes you feel like, hey, I'm involved now. But I'm telling you guys, they are using you. They are using your idea of what's good, or playing on your inner emotions, on what it means to be a good person, and manipulating you. I think a lot of you guys are genuinely good people that have been misled. And once again, I think this happens on the left and the right. I think this happens with any kind of political movement, unfortunately, that gets big enough. Why? Because we have intelligence and other kind of deep state apparatuses that are circumventing the judicial process, circumventing the processes of the republic to keep the checks and balance in place. And they've been doing this for damn well over 100 years at this point, if not longer, and are trying to lead, once again, I think America and the world into some kind of, once again, even if it doesn't become a true one world government, it's going to be some form of destruction of your rights and privileges, some form of basically changing America underneath your feet without your ability to even criticize the way in which it's being changed. And that, if that's not tyranny, if that's not evil, if that's not a dictatorship, then what is? You know? So I think people really need to wake up to this, and they need to realize that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're in politics or not. You don't have to say you're on the left or the right or this or that. Just say, hey, I'm against this shit. This shit is not cool. This is not what our country, any good moments from our country's past ever aspired towards. We need to fix that. We need to get back control of our country. We need to realize that these assholes playing God are just that, assholes playing God. Stop being afraid of them. Sure, they might try to scare you with, ooh, I'll freeze your bank account, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. Or, ooh, I kicked you off Twitter. I run your life now. Guess what? Don't give them that power. Find another way. There's plenty of alternative platforms out there. Get stronger. Grow in your faith. Grow in your convictions. Grow in your power to fight back. Because guess what? We got a short time of life on this earth. I've spent my life trying to become, a better actor, a better filmmaker, better storyteller, better writer. I might fail at all those things. In some regards, a lot of people would look at my career and go, yes, you've already failed, okay? And that's fine. You know what I mean? Like I don't care, because what I care about the most is about spreading truth and finding truth as much as possible, and making sure that the rights of that I got to enjoy as a person and as a kid growing up, that my children, which I don't even have kids, I don't even have a wife, but that one day when I do, I can look them in the eye and say, yeah, your dad tried to fight to keep your rights in check, so that you could be here to ask questions, to look into things, and arrive at your own conclusions. Because is there anything more that we owe our children? Is there anything more that we owe ourselves than that? The ability to ask questions, and to research and to think for ourselves, and ultimately the ability to be wrong too, because that's what freedom means as well. And so I'm scared nowadays more than ever, looking at the political landscape, looking at the online landscape, and realizing they're closing in fast. They are deleting you. They're shadow banning you. They don't even have to delete your channel. They can just, kind of make sure the critical mass doesn't see it. They can make sure you never go trending, right? So, we got to wake up, guys. And I know I've been monologuing for a minute here, but like this shit is ridiculous, and this has got to stop. Like we have to remember we're Americans and people first with rights, and that no matter what disagreements you or I have, we have to stand together for the sake of our future. And really that means for the sake of our children. So I think that's what I'm really asking people is, hey, put aside your differences and realize we have to fight for what matters right now. Because guess what? A lot of these social issues or smaller, I should say, issues of various kinds that people put so much of their energy and passion towards, I'm sorry, and I truly mean this, whether or not I agree with what you're fighting for or not, you're fighting for something that's largely irrelevant, because we're heading towards the kind of culture and a kind of government system where they're definitely not going to have you around. They're definitely not going to have me around. They're going to have a very, very limited bandwidth of what thoughts you can have, what feelings you can express, what criticisms can be criticized. And, it's kind of like now with the modern discourse, the average American is going to believe in bullshit and be completely disconnected from reality, and be in an echo chamber of sorts that fits their particular variation, so that there's really no truth anymore, because not only are we all divided, but we don't even have a chance of escaping that, because we're all in our own little techno prisons, So anyways, Godspeed, God bless to all of you. I mean all of this in no ill will. I genuinely just want to see the best for the country and for people. And once again, I'm not a political actor. I'm not a political agent in any way. I'm just a person who morally felt the need to speak up and say this, because D-Day, the clock striking midnight, whatever metaphor you want to use here, it's just around the corner. World War III is just around the corner. And I'm sorry, but it's just like this book, Disinformation, which I highly recommend you read that book, Disinformation, really good book, written by an ex-KGB actor. Yuri Bezmenov is another ex-KGB guy I recommend listening to. These are people who, were advisors to President Reagan and a couple other U.S. presidents, and really understand the propaganda and the mentality of the Soviet state that was used in the way mental or information warfare was used in the 20th century especially. And they all say, unfortunately, the same scary shit, which is, hey, America, they're doing that to you now. American government, unfortunately, is part of this in doing it to its own people. They're brainwashing you. They're misleading you. They're controlling the narrative for you. And meanwhile, you have this deep state apparatus, this detached, rogue, criminal element of government, essentially, which is unchecked and unbounded, being able to do whatever the fuck it wants, whether it's drug trafficking, human trafficking, rigging elections. Doesn't matter. I mean, it goes so much deeper than any kind of political corruption you can imagine. It gets so deep, so much deeper than that. It gets really into the weeds of the evil scum of the world, and that's why I am a religious person and believe that, hey, there is, we can debate existentially a lot. But to me, the reality of good and evil, or that there are good actors or people who are fighting for good, for good and for righteousness and for what is right, versus those who are selfish and who are greedy and who care only about wealth and power and the accruement of those things. I mean, that's a very real thing. I'm sorry, even if I was an atheist, I would very much believe that that's the world. And we're in a time when the bad guys are closing in and really think that they have a shot at, once again, if it's not truly some one world government, one world religion system, it's going to at least be an attempt at that, where you have a massive erosion of rights. If you don't believe me, just think about what rights you had 10 years ago versus now. And the problem is it's kind of like being a frog in boiling water, and you're not going to feel it until, you your skin's peeling off of you already. You know what I mean? Like part of this is that a lot of us feel like we still have all of our rights. I mean, I think you're a bit dumb, to be honest, if you think that at this point. I don't think you've been paying attention, but for the sake of conversation, right? Like, yeah, a lot of us think, oh, I still have the right to go to the store, do this or that. It's like, yeah, but these people controlled, like, just in the lockdowns, what you could go do, where you could shop at. No, you can only shop at Walmart and Amazon. You know what I mean? Oh, I see how it is. Okay, so it's the small businesses you want to destroy. It's the individual you want to destroy. That is what this is. Make no mistake. This isn't about race. This isn't about sex, gender, or anything else, right? This is class warfare at the ultimate extreme, where you have the ultimate top 1%ers, I would say. Really, it's the 1% of the 1%. It's not anybody who's in the 1% of wealth, right? Not everybody who's rich is in on this. But it is a lot of rich people, uber wealthy people with radical ideas who are trying to play God. Make no mistake about that. They think that they can fix the world by destroying it, essentially. I mean, I laugh a bit, but like, that is the insanity and the psychosis by which they operate. I mean, any of these assholes, I don't care who it is, Fauci, Gates, any of these fuckers, George Soros, the Astor family, the Rothschild family, all the banking families, you know what I mean? Like the supposed black nobility that's connected with all that, which is supposed to be like this list of, I forget, it's like 12 or 13 families that are, once again, that's the part of the conspiracy element where you could debate a bit, where it's like, okay, how far back into history does this go? Has this been throughout all time? I'm not necessarily saying it's been the same groups always trying to control the world, but I'm saying that it's the same incentive and the same spiritual or mental, if that makes you feel better, dynamic that is the recurring plague of evil on this earth. And that, make no mistake, those people are crazy, they are psychotic, and they do want to destroy you and your family. They do want to invert the values of the public of the world. They do want to separate you from your resources. They do want you to be brainwashed and indoctrinated and to believe only the books that their people have published. Trust me, it's fucking real, okay? That's not a conspiracy. That's not a this or that. That's just a matter of, hey, do you dig into shit? Do you research shit? Do you critically think? Because unfortunately, most of us have been brainwashed to not only not know our history, but we don't even know how to think about stuff. We don't know how to accrue information. We don't know how to do research. We don't know how to critically evaluate news sources. Investigative journalism is dead in America, in the world. There are, like Tim Dillon says, there's like 3 or 4 real investigative journalists, and that's simple because if there's an old joke, and it's really true and really good, that well, not good, but you know what I mean, it's very true, where hey, if you're an investigative journalist, like, Godspeed, because basically you're either, the CIA's after you or you're dead. And that's very true. That's very true. And I'm not just here to criticize CIA. Trust me, there's bad actors and elements in every intelligence agency, just as there are good actors and elements in every intelligence agency. But that because there are elements that go unchecked in these deeper, darker parts of the government, that there is this huge disconnect, and essentially a rogue government within our government that we've had presidents as far back as JFK, and even further back to, I think it was Eisenhower and Truman even, that have made mention of their criticisms of these forces that were coming in and disrupting the process of the American government and what it was supposed to be. And while it was being subverted, it was very carefully presented in the public eye as if it was still going, as if we still have all our rights, as if the FBI doesn't have the right to just search through your search history now without a warrant, which they do. We're reaching crazy, creepy times. And if you're not scared by any of the things I'm talking about, if you think that, none of it's true or whatever, trust me, you are just in massive denial. You are just in massive denial, or you have not looked into it, you haven't done your research, in which case you shouldn't really be talking about this stuff if you don't know what you're talking about. And that's why I say to everybody, unplug from the mainstream, unplug from social media, because it's doing the same thing that corporate media used to do to people. And now, in fact, to me, it's a lot more effective, But the internet is a silver lining, because if you have a PC, if you have internet, you have access to get away from Apple News and all the kind of preconditioned, brainwashed kind of stuff that's out there for you, and to do your own research and to dig. And yes, it takes work, and sure, it's uncomfortable to learn new things. I get that. But we have to do that, because if we don't do that, we are going to be quite literally putting ourselves in chains very soon here. And who knows, maybe it's a prison that doesn't feel like a prison, like Aldous Huxley wrote about in Brave New World, right? Maybe it's a prison you can't touch or smell or taste or whatever, but it's a prison nonetheless, because you feel like you have choices. It's just open enough to make you feel like you have options, but everything is very binary, and everything is very, it's like our political system. It's like how much choice of the American people, how much of the will of the American people is actually reflected in our political system, when all we have is this fighting of left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, and not to mention those respective left and right movements never do what they're promising they're going to do, right? They never come through on the promises of the campaign, or only partly do. And that even what the left or what the right stands for at any given point in time is so mercurial that you slowly begin to realize that both the left and the right, meaning the establishment left and right — I'm not talking about you at home as a left or a right-leaning person, I'm talking about the establishment — it's really all the same big show. It's really all one, it's all the same big circus. So it doesn't matter if it's left, right, left, right, left, right. It's the same damn pair of legs. That's what people need to realize. That's what you need to wake up to. That's what you need to become awakened to, because if you don't, we are all fucked. I say this with love, but we are all fucked if we don't wake up to this. And guess what? A lot of people are waking up, and that makes me feel awesome, and people are standing up for the rights, and parents are going down to school board meetings and standing up for what they believe, and they are, I've seen some amazing courage by certain people who have risked jokes on stage that they couldn't tell anymore, or whatever it is, in your own small way or big way, if you feel called to it. Because trust me, we need courage and strength on all fronts. Any way you can in your personal life, or public life, if you have one, to make a difference, start doing it. Because the world needs a hero right now. And I'm really not trying to be cliche in saying that, but we really fucking do. We need a hero. And I think the only way we can do that is stop having us all hope that it's going to be a singular savior that's going to save us, and instead realize, hey, we can all be a lesser savior. You know what I mean? We can all be a hero in some local issue that's occurring. Because trust me, these global policies very quickly will start affecting your local political elements and your local culture. I mean, if it hasn't already, it's going to affect you and your friends and everything. It's affected me and mine. I can guarantee you that. So we really need to start waking up, and we really do, all of us, need to start making a move for the better. So find the strength in you, find God, find strength in Him, like I tried to do, and go out there and fight for what's right. You know what I mean? And, to whatever forces or agencies or entities want to try to manipulate my words, once again, I'm not advocating for physical violence. I never would. I've never even been in a fight myself in my life, which isn't really something to brag at, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a physical person. I believe in words. I believe in the power of discourse and the power of conversation, the power of genuine discussion and debate to arrive at the truth. That's what I believe in, and that's what I want. Not just for our politics, but for our larger culture, for comedy, for entertainment, for stories themselves. I mean, if for nothing else, do this so that you wake up in a future where you can actually have a laugh and not be worried if that's going to end you up in prison. Because I think this was Orwell who said this. Within every joke is a tiny revolution, and that's completely true. And if I'm a threat to anybody because of the things I've said here today, well, it's just because I've been trying to speak the truth, and that I believe in and want to stand up for the truth. And if that makes me an enemy to you assholes, well, then so be it. But just know you are damned and you are going to hell, because you aren't, people love saying, oh, you're not on the right side of history. You, my friends, you fuckers are definitely not on the right side of history in this one. Anyway, God bless you all. I hope we can stand together as Americans. I hope we can come together as people. I hope we can put our rights before our emotions and our random fleeting opinions on things. I really do, because ultimately I do care about everyone, and I do firmly believe that if you don't, at all costs, protect the rights of the individual, that they will come for all of us. They'll come for minorities, majorities, everybody in far between, because if you don't protect the rights of the individual, that means they can come for anybody, because guess what? We're all individuals. So you protect the rights of the individual at all costs. Period. God bless. God bless America. Godspeed.